Kia ora, I'm Helen King, and you're listening to Cancer Conversations, the podcast you never thought you'd need for the diagnosis you never want to hear. A quick warning before we start. This episode deals with sexual themes, so use your discretion where you listen, and you might want to pop on some headphones. I got to sit down with one of my favourite people and talk about sex. You might know her from the award-winning podcast Sex.Life or giving her expertise on breakfast TV. Morgan Penn is a somatic sexologist and a good friend of mine. I had the pleasure of working with her and comedian Hayley Sproul on Sex.Life and have learned so much about bringing pleasure back into my life.
It really is about starting a new journey of reconnection and reclamation.
Basically, my breast tried to kill me. So how do you trust that?
We see libido as this mythical creature that we might have experienced a little bit and it's just poof, it's gone, and it's like everyone's desperately seeking this mythical creature, come back, we live. The same kind of taboo-ness around this stuff. It's like, this is a part of our body, our genitals, that we want to be really healthy.
A massive thank you to Look Good, Feel Better and Dry July for making this podcast possible. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to good podcasts. So welcome, Morgan. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited that we're doing more podcasting together.
I know, it's so nice, but it's weird for me being on this other side and being able to ask you questions.
I love it.
Putting you in the hot seat. I think a really good place to start, especially for people who might not be familiar with you and may not be familiar with the work that you do, is to explain to us what is a somatic sexologist.
Yes, that's a great place to start. So I help people have better sex lives, and a somatic sexologist is somebody who really incorporates the body. So the lens that I look through when I'm working with clients is through the body wisdom. So yes, there's such a big piece of talk therapy that happens within me supporting people to have a better sex life. And then there's the mind experience, but then there's also the body experience. And the body can be having such a different experience of things. Cognitively, we can make sense of things and understand why we've gone through something and why we're feeling like we are. But the body is having a very different experience and maybe not acknowledging, having the acknowledgement that it needs to shift into the gear or to the state that the mind is. So you could be having different experiences with the mind and body. And so for me, as a somatic sexologist, I help integrate the body and mind.
Which is so important, I think, and I'm sure you'll be aware of this with the clients that you work with. When you go through something as huge as cancer, it doesn't just impact your body, it impacts everything, the mind, body, spirit. And I think that when you go through a really full-on medical experience, it can really take you out of your body. And I've said to people before, by the end, there wasn't a part of my body that wasn't impacted by some sort of side effect. And I felt so medicalized. And I didn't feel like I was in my body anymore. And I feel like this is maybe quite a good place to start for listeners, is that is a challenge for so many people from all walks of life to know, how do I come back into my body when I've gone through something as life-altering as cancer? So where would you start with someone if they've gone through a traumatic event or something really medical?
Yeah, I know, and thank you for sharing that. And can I just ask then, when you're talking about the body kind of feeling like it's being medicalized, you've been poked and prodded by numerous people, did you even have a sense that your body was your own?
No, not anymore. It was really weird. And I think part of that is that all of a sudden you can't trust your body because your body has done this thing that is so basically my breast tried to kill me. So how do you trust that? But also, like, yeah, like for me, I'd had a breast removed and then I had scars and all of this stuff. And um, yeah, everything about your body has been, yeah, you have given over the autonomy and agency of your body to your medical team to try and save your life. And so it feels really weird by the end of that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I guess there's a few key pieces there that I think are universal in what you're talking about with dissociation from the body.
Mm.
And that is that trust. You've kind of given up trust on your body, but then because of that, your body no longer trusts you either. So there's a
Mm.
new relationship that needs to be built with the body. And then also there's the piece around feeling like you are in control and that you have power, because quite often the power, you've handed over your power, right? You've gone,
Mm.
okay, the medical side, they know what's best and
Yes.
they're going to do whatever they need to do to keep me alive. My breasts are killing me. You guys do whatever you need to do, right?
Mm.
But within that, we hand over our power. And so it is about the reclamation of the power, the reclamation of the trust.
Mm.
It is like, yeah, it's almost like hitting the reset button and starting a whole new relationship with a whole new body, really, especially if if we're looking at like you, for example, you've lost a breast, there's scars, it looks different, it feels different. It really is about starting a new journey of reconnection and reclamation. And I mean, there's lots of different ways of doing that. And one of them is just about the acknowledgement, actually, first and foremost. And what does that look like? Is that grief? Probably.
Mm.
And I guess I don't have a lived experience of this, right? So I hope you don't mind me
Yeah.
asking you, but
Yeah.
like, I guess the sense that I get, and I've got a few clients that, have gone through cancer journeys, is that it's almost like there's this happy clapper sense around, like, you've survived,
Yes.
yeah. And it feels like there's no space, but this
No.
real grief and sorrow of like what you've been through and what's happened to the body. Would I be right in saying that for your experience?
Absolutely. And I've spoken about this with a few people where it's this strange sort of dichotomy where, on the one hand, absolutely, you are so grateful that you have had successful treatment or you've had life extending treatment. But on the other side of that, there's this expectation that you'll just go back to normal afterwards, and you can't. Like there's no way you can go back to who you were. Um, After going through something as enormous as a cancer diagnosis. And it's it's really challenging because people don't understand that, and they may not understand the grief. They're like, well, you're alive though. And it's like, I'm alive, but I'm not living because I'm so impacted by what's happened to me. And so it can be really lonely because all of a sudden you're dealing with all of these conflicting feelings
Mm,
while being in a body that no longer feels like your own.
mm, yeah. It's so tough. And I think as a society, we don't know how to deal with death
No,
well,
no.
right? So this is just a ripple effect of that, right? You could have died, and
Yep,
that is terrifying.
yep.
And nobody wants to talk about that. And nobody wants to talk about how much grief you may be feeling or how hard this piece is now, because you're going to live. So
Mm.
let's just focus on that.
Yeah,
And 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 there is one part, yes, that gratitude of course is there, and
yeah.
you do want to celebrate that. And then I guess what I was talking about is the body is
Mm.
having its own experience, and it can't understand why it's lost a breast or
No.
had this like trauma and cutting and bleeding and scar tissue. That, with scar tissue, it's not just the site of where that's happened, that can
Mm.
go throughout the whole body, that can affect the whole fascial network of the body, which can cause tension and different kind of aches and pains that go
Mm.
on forever. So it's not, I just think we need to be looking at this kind of body trauma from a whole different lens, a way bigger lens that encompasses everything and the emotional body as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I guess for me it's been 6 years of trying different things and coming back into my body. That has been a big, big process. And I think part of that has been making peace with it and knowing that, because there's lots of things like I'm a bigger woman, I've only got one breast, I haven't been able to have children. So, in so many ways, my body has not done what society says a woman's body should do. Um, but I've had to reframe it and be like, I withstood a horrific amount of chemotherapy, radiation, operations,
Yeah.
and cancer, and this body got me through it. And that was the start for me of going, actually, I'm not going to listen to what other people say. I'm going to look at my body and go, holy shit, it's strong. Mm,
Beautiful. Yeah, it is about finding safety in the body and in the reframe of all of that. Yeah, whilst also like, and I guess finding peace is a different, it looks
yeah,
different for everybody.
absolutely. And this
Mm.
is, I guess, a slight I guess segue, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and I actually think it does. I mean, it all comes back to the body and our minds and things. And when I put the call out for people's questions, one thing that did keep coming up, especially for younger people who might be in a surgical menopause or a chemical menopause, they say they'll talk about, I don't have a libido anymore. And I guess the whole conversation at the moment around people in menopause is, oh, our libido goes. And so now I'm really curious about, what is libido? Does it just disappear? Can it come back? And is there hope if you're like, oh, now I'm in this surgical menopause and I don't feel like having sex, or I don't feel desire?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and probably like the main reason that people come to see me. And it's almost like we see libido as this like mythical creature that like
Yeah.
we might have experienced a little bit, and then it's just poof, it's gone, and it's like everyone's like desperately seeking this mythical creature, like, come back.
Yeah.
We don't live.
Yeah.
um but libido, I mean, really, like bringing it back to basics, it's 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 personal to everybody, and everybody has a different experience of what this looks like, but it's talking about your personal sex drive or
Mm,
your desire for sexual activity. And I guess it's influenced by a combination of things, which could be like biological factors, physical, social factors. There's lots of pieces to this, and I suppose when we're talking about menopause,
mm,
sort of specifically to this, we are talking about the biological side, which is the hormones. And the hormones probably play one of the biggest pieces of this. And yes, we like, from a biological perspective, if a woman has gone through menopause, she isn't able to have babies anymore.
mm.
And so really that desire or need to have desire or a libido is gone, right?
Yeah.
Like when we think about our cavemen, cave woman days,
Yeah.
that's it. Like, woof, easy. So there is that very piece. But what is beautiful about libido and pleasure in the body is that it can be cultivated.
Yeah.
And what we see a lot with women, especially, is that we've got responsive sex drives and
Mm,
responsive libidos. So
mm-hmm.
actually, if we can activate and turn on the body is then responsive, and then a desire builds, which is a little bit hard when we're not feeling that connected to the body, right? So
Yes.
it is about having the journey of being in the body, the felt sense of the body, so that we can find the pleasure and then move into something quite sexy. So it is a big conversation, right? But if it does come down to hormones, then yeah, there are some pretty amazing things that are out there these days in terms of what can be taken, for supplements or medications that can support hormonally. So it's definitely worth, I think, checking out and seeing if there's something that resonates for you. But then obviously like the physiological factors as well, like the mental health and the emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
If you have got lingering things or feeling like you haven't really dealt with the impact on your mental health, which
Mm-hmm.
is, it's not a one-time therapy session. This is ongoing, because as humans, we're evolving, we're changing. Healing isn't linear. We
Mm-hmm.
tend to this part of ourselves continuously. It just like doesn't fucking end.
No, no.
You're like, when am I healed?
Come on.
Doesn't work like that.
I know, it's so annoying.
Annoying. Where's the magic pill?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
So, yeah.
I think there are a couple of really good points in there. The first one, and I think of this as someone who's cisgendered and has been in heterosexual relationships and have experienced the highs and, the ebbs and flows of libido and that sort of thing. And I feel like I see this so much with female friends who have husbands that, and I understand why, especially if you've got children, that it all becomes very mechanical, and especially for cisgendered women, I feel like we often put everything else before ourselves.
Mm.
And then you throw a cancer diagnosis in that, and you probably don't feel like sex, and you might then feel pressure from the partner and all of these things. And having, worked with you on Sex.life and heard all the amazing, insights and stuff, I always come back to it's about the communication, reconnecting with each other. And it's not always about P and V or penetration, which I think goes back to what you're talking about is coming back into your body. Like, does it feel good that they tickle your back, or is them picking up some slack around home going to give you mad horn because it's like, yes. And I feel like this is part of the conversation we need to be having, where if I feel safe and nurtured and supported by my partner, then I'm more likely to want to be physical with them. But if they feel like they are my child and I'm gentle parenting somebody else's adult son, then I'm highly unlikely to want to have sex with you.
Amen, sister. Totally. You absolutely nailed it. And so herein lies a really great solution. Figure out what your needs are that's
Yeah.
going to give you like the sense of wanting to open to that partner.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard enough just to open to yourself sexually,
Oh my
right?
God, yeah.
But to feel like you can actually open and share that with somebody else, what is it going to take? Like, what do you need? Yeah, is it about that person carrying some of the mental load or the
Yes.
physical load around the house? Yes, that definitely. Is it about if you've had a change in your body from having radiation or things cut off you? Is it about really feeling desired by your partner with words or
Yes.
with touch? Like, what is it? And I think, that's a really powerful exercise to do for both partners, right? Because I think this is the thing as well. I don't know how good the communication, I mean, honestly, I see this across the board. Communication is shit when it comes to sexual stuff, right? It's a skill set that we have not been taught.
No.
And so, but it is a learned skill. So we can improve in this area. And I actually think sometimes the best way is just radical honesty.
Yeah.
If you know you're in a safe place with a person that can actually like hold you, and you know that you can like speak freely and that it's not from a place of wanting to hurt or damage the relationship, radical honesty is such a breath of fresh air,
Yeah.
And so actually figuring out what your needs are for both people and hearing the partner's experience of what the partner who's had cancer or trauma to the body or anything big in their lives,
Mm.
they're having their own reality of it as well, and quite
Yeah.
often that gets overlooked, and or maybe at one stage it gets a little bit of acknowledgement, but then you're both on the journey together. So it is about how do you stay connected, how do you hear each other's journeys, truth, pains, joys, like creating that kind of a safe space together is really important.
It's so important. And I actually want to give a little plug for the work that you've done on Sex.life. There's 2 seasons, but I want to go back to one of I feel like the number one, if you're going to start anywhere and you can use this anywhere in life, is desires, fears, and boundaries. And I'm going to let you explain what that is, because I think it's genius.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I shared this from the hope that it would be a communication framework, simple enough for any relationship to have it used in, whether that's a love relationship, a child parent relationship, a working relationship, friend relationship. But really, what it is, it does require vulnerable,
Mm.
hearty communication. And really, it is what it says it is. It's desires, fears, boundaries. You share what your desires are from a certain situation. And, we could bring it down to a one sexual interaction, or you could make it for your whole sex life. So for me, the desires for my sex life could be having sex every day. I want to have passionate sex. I want an
Yeah.
orgasm every time I have sex. I want the person I'm having sex with to be like kissing me like throughout the whole time. You can
Yeah.
throw anything out there, and sometimes it feels silly to say your desires, but it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm doing the exercise. I'm just going to throw it out there and see how it's received.
Yeah.
Once you've said your desires, the other person, you can work out what works for you, but the other person can kind of feedback on those desires and go, okay, yeah, I hear your desire for that. I can do that. That's cool. And then you go into the fears.
Yeah.
And so this is normally the hardest part for people, actually, because the fears are often something that would pop into the head, and then you'd get really rational about it and you go, oh, well, I won't say that because that's
Yeah.
silly, it probably won't happen. But
Yeah.
the thing is that it's popped into your head for a reason. It's
Yeah.
circulating around, and it might be like, my fear is that once I get nude, you're not going to find me attractive.
Yeah.
Or my body's changed. Like, do you still actually find me attractive? I know
Mm.
you say you do, but I have a fear that that's not true, right? So it's actually like, it's such a beautiful space to just say the fear, and like once you do, the electrical charge of it in your body is like, bah, it's out, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's no longer you just having to have it circulating in you. And it's so refreshing, because how often do you look at a partner and go, what are you thinking about? Or what's holding you back? Or
Yeah.
there's a distant look, or there's a disconnect during sex. What's happening in that moment? And sometimes the fear that you start to hear in these like sessions of sharing,
Yeah.
you go, oh my God, I get it now.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah, that sharing fears is a really beautiful and scary and tender and yummy thing to do. And
definitely.
then the boundaries, from hearing the desires and the fears, that's what you decide to do with the boundaries. So you go, okay, so what I'm hearing is you want sex every day, which is unreasonable. So let's go for once a week.
Yeah.
Let's go once a week. We can both do that. Okay, cool. Your fear is that, yeah, I don't find you attractive anymore. So let's like, what would work to help that fear? Like, should the boundary be that, we could keep the lights off for the first week, or we slowly bring in candlelight, or like, or the boundary is that we're only doing it from behind for a week until you feel more comfortable and opening, or,
Mm.
there's lots of things to do, but you've said everything. Everything should be off your chest, and then you're making a plan forward. So desires, fears, and boundaries. Practice it. It'll be a bit clunky at the start, but once you get the hang of it, it's like you're cooking with gas.
Absolutely. And I wanted to, as you're talking, there was something else that I'm sure you've mentioned before, and I think this is quite relevant to anyone who may have been through a cancer experience where they no longer really feel safe in their body, or they feel like it's just like, how do I trust it? And I think for, you've mentioned before, for women, or people who are cisgendered women, their nervous system needs to feel safe to be open to, I guess, that intimacy and pleasure. And so I feel like what you're talking about with desires, fears, and boundaries is actually helping set that up, and so that openness can happen.
100%. I think especially across the board, even throughout history, is like women often don't feel heard.
Mm.
And so this is creating a space to really be heard, and then like a plan to move forward. And when a woman feels held in what she's said and it's actually okay,
Yeah.
there is this kind of, oh, I can relax. And so when I'm talking about the nervous system, the holding, the tension, the protection that comes in, is for anybody, that is a contraction, not an openness. And for
Yeah.
have a desire for sex and to want like connected, yummy sex, yeah, we do need the nervous system to kind of have this sigh
Yeah.
of relief and opening. And that comes through, yeah, safety, slowness, like touch of places that aren't necessarily sexual
Mm.
first, to feel that like, oh, okay, I'm receiving touch from somebody else or myself, and it's not a taking touch. It's
Yeah.
actually a safe, giving, connected touch.
God, absolutely.
Mm.
So I think the next question that I got a lot, it all feeds into each other. But what I've found, especially for people who've had gynae cancer, so cervical or ovarian, um, or even anal cancers, and then we've got people with penises who may have had prostate cancer that can cause impotence, and so and then we've got our gynae cancers who may have atrophy, which means that things are pretty shut up. And I was horrified, and this is a totally different conversation, at the lack of care that these people get in the medical system, um, to look after it. And so there seems to be a real sort of feeling with a lot of people who've contacted me that penetration is off the table, and now my sex life with my husband or partner is gone. And I keep going back to, look, it's not all about P and V. What else can we do to feel amazing?
Yes, yes, I know. And do you know what? It's that lack of care. It's
Mm.
like the same kind of taboo-ness around this stuff. It's like this is a part of our body, our
Yeah,
genitals, that we want to be really healthy and to have like lots of vitality. And
yeah,
unfortunately, when we're talking about atrophy, that is like there is no vitality happening there. It's like shut up shop. It's like coming back into itself, you know?
oh,
And so really we need good blood flow to that area. That's so key. And
mm,
so one of the most amazing pieces for blood flow in that area is actually arousal. And so whether or not you do anything with that arousal, it's actually about feeling that blood flow to getting down there. So whether that's reading smutty books or listening to audio erotica or watching porn or whatever it is that turns you on from the mind, that's going to send blood flow to the genitals, that is a good thing. It's really important, like even like some good stretching in that area. Kegels,
yeah.
we've got to be really careful with Kegels, but just, like quite often, I have clients that turn up and they say to me, I'm dead down there. I go, Jesus Christ, okay, well, hang on a minute. Do you know what your pelvic floor muscles feel like if you tense them? And they go, yeah. And I said, okay, I want you to tense it 3 times for me. And then all of a sudden they're like, my God, I can feel it. I can feel I've got a penis, I've got a vagina. I've forgotten I've had that there. And so just with a little bit of clenching with those muscles brings in blood flow. So that's a really key piece. But I also think the connection, the body
Yeah.
mind connection to that area is important as well. So whether or not that's like cupping placing a hand over your
Yes.
genitals and just breathing, because that old saying of like where attention goes, energy flows, that
Yeah.
is a key piece as well to feeling like you're activated and connected to that part of your body. For like vagina owners especially, I think it's really important to be like moisturizing that area, some kind of a lubricant
Mm.
that is like really hydrating and nourishing. And so there's this beautiful product, it's called NU,
Yeah.
and it's, have you talked about this at all on
I've
this?
heard about it, I think, but yeah.
It's amazing. It's made in New Zealand. It's made by female practitioners. It's 100% natural, hormone free. It's like olive oil, beeswax, and Kanuka oil.
Wow.
That's all it is. And you can use it on the vulva, you can use it internally, like it's a lubricant, it's a moisturizer. I've used it personally, I've recommended it to my mom, like it's just the most beautiful, luxurious, and healing thing to put on your pissoir.
Oh,
So
amazing.
yes, yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be using for that. And then I guess like hydration, and diet is so important. So like actually what you're putting in, and like omega-3s, like those fatty acids are so important. Like if you have listened to Sex Life, I talked about how the pig is a meat eater.
Yeah.
I know that's a bit wild,
Yeah.
but like yeah, we really need omega-3s and fatty acids and
Yeah.
all the good stuff, which will promote good genital health. So, yeah. And I think you did also mean, I know I feel like I'm talking a lot about like women and vagina havers here, but for men, that prostate piece is huge
Mm.
and really needs to be acknowledged, because that specific area in our body for both sexes or all sexes is normally a place of quite a bit of hidden shame.
Oh,
And I
wow.
had a teacher that talked about that's the place where we hide our fear, our shame, our guilt, literally all our shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we don't have a deep connection to that area. And especially for, men, there's a lot of internalized homophobia sometimes in our society,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But actually that is a space that has got a lot of pleasure. And if prostate gets removed, or if there's been operations internally to work on that, it's really invasive.
Mm.
As females, we get used to receiving if we like penises or things being inserted there, but we get used to receiving. Whereas for most people in male bodies, they're not used to that. And so
Mm.
it's very invasive. It's a whole new thing. And actually, in my training, when I was doing body work, I was paired up with a man who had just had his prostate removed.
Yeah.
He was, I think, 6 months post surgery. And I went in and held the spot where the prostate was. And he just wept and
Mm.
wept and wept. And that's the body memory, it was a deep acknowledgement. And the last time somebody had gone in there, it was medical and it was
Mm.
traumatic. And so to
Yep.
have someone with slow reverence, gentleness to just hold that spot. And I was also holding with my other hand his heart space. It was a safe place for him to grieve.
Beautiful.
And so we have to give credence to the body in these spaces. And it's interesting because he hadn't been able to have an erection or hold a lasting erection since then. But after that, he reckoned he was good to go. So,
Amazing.
yeah. And this is what I see time and time again, is really all the body needs is like deep acknowledgement of what it's been through.
Absolutely. And I guess I guess I could ask you so many questions, but I feel like this is one, I mean, it's what is the right word? My brain went blank. It's relevant to me, because I left a relationship last year. And so when I felt ready, I've ventured out into dating and also having sex again.
Mm.
And I don't know, like I have hang-ups about my body, but the one thing that I have just worked on just ever since I had my mastectomy is just being, this is what my body looks like. I have one breast. I don't feel ashamed of it.
Mm.
But it is really weird when you start, venturing into another person seeing you naked, or, being a massive hoe bag. Um,
Yes.
enjoying yourself. I do say to people, hey, look, there's just something about my body. I'm a cancer survivor. I only have one breast. If that's going to, if that's a problem for you, I can, not a problem, but I can keep my bra on if I feel uncomfortable, and you can have that conversation. But I think it's that desires, fears, and boundaries of, this is who I am. And I'm able to have like much more positive sexual interactions with people because I have that framework to go, these are the boundaries, this is my body, and this is how I want it to be respected.
Mm.
Um, and then it is actually a lot easier to sort of be naked in front of people.
Mm.
And so I guess that's just for people who might be, worried about showing their body. Um, but if there was one piece of advice you would give to people who might be venturing out into dating and they're worried about not being able to have a, penetrative sex, or there's just all of these things, what is the one thing you would say to them to help them get into a confident space to do it?
Yeah. It is, I guess, so individual, but I
Mm,
guess the confidence really needs to come with your own felt sense of the body.
mm,
And so I'm a big advocate for self-pleasure.
mm.
And when I say self-pleasure, that might be a sexy like neck rub, or it might be tweaking the nipples, or it might be, touching genitals, or whatever that looks like for you. But really having a sense of, that you can feel pleasure in your body, like subtleties of pleasure, that you can stand in front of the mirror and, how nobody likes their body every day. Like
Yeah,
that, we've kind of been sold a bit of a dream about that whole self-love thing of
yeah,
like, yeah, shit, yeah, I love myself. Like
yeah,
some days I wake up like that, and some days, hell no,
yeah.
And so, but it is like, can we find neutrality with the body of like, this is me. This is how I'm going to show up unapologetically
Yes.
as me, and having that sense of like, if there's rejection, if you don't feel that with somebody else, or somebody else is not quite on your wavelength, or it doesn't matter. You have got yourself, and you've got a good sense of yourself, and an understanding that you are worthy of pleasure, you are worthy of good connection, you're worthy of having your needs met, regardless of how you look or how you feel, or it's really like the basic core needs and desires. You're worthy of having them met. So getting really clear on that, I suppose. Yeah, and having a good network of people if like shit hits the fan, like
Yes.
people that you want to tell like weird dating stories to, or saw him sitting at the table and I just turned around and ran. Like, I don't know. Like it's yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's
What
such a
would
good
you
one.
say?
Oh, I don't think I was, can I say it better than that? Probably not. I would say that the first thing to do is to really make sure you have strong boundaries. And if that's work you need to do, then that's where I'd start. And, your body boundaries being, if my body tells me that this person's off, then I'm going to listen to it. And I don't have to continue on a date with them. I don't have to have sex with this person. So it's that first and foremost
Mm.
coming back to learning really good boundaries, learning that you can trust yourself, you can trust your body, and that you are the body's advocate, and then getting really clear around what you will accept and what you won't.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I think those two. And also, we've mentioned the podcast Sex Life a lot because we, you know, It's such
Our
a good
baby.
podcast thing. But if I think about what I'd recommend, I'd say go back to episode 1, season 1, and listen to all the episodes and do the home play, because there is a journey in itself around your body and reconnecting and having fun and being silly, and kind of learning about what feels good and what doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Beautiful. Shit, yes.
Yeah.
And really, what that everything surmised of what you've said to me, it's about having that sense of self-worth, right? That you're worthy of upholding your boundaries, and figuring out what your needs are, so that you are your priority, so that you've got your body's got trust in you. Yeah, I love that.
And this is probably oversharing with strangers on the internet, being whoever's
Never.
listening. But the last time I had sex was with a man in a hotel room, and it was the most exquisite experience. There was just so many good things about it, and it was just that time. I haven't gone back because they live in London, but it was all of those things where I felt good in my body. I
Yeah.
felt good that who they were. There was communication. There was all of those things. And I remember saying to Morgan after this, that's the bar. Like, I can no longer accept anything lower than that, because now I actually know, even though I'm a grown woman, that that is the bar. And why on earth, when I know what's available, would I accept anything less than that? Yeah.
Yes, and I love that
Yes.
so much, because I guess it's also a marker, right, of your
Yeah.
growth, of
Yes.
where you're at, of what you're willing to put up with and accept.
Mm,
And then I think often, if we've done the same thing for a long time, we think that the quality of the people we're connecting with, that's
mm.
all that's out there as well. But actually, how refreshing was this person to
Yeah.
show up and meet you where you're at with your healing and your work, and yeah, to have such a yummy experience. And now you're like, that's it, honey, that's it for me, that or better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, on that note, Morgan, it is always a pleasure to be able to talk to you. You are just a magic person who I love dearly. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Oh, well, it feels so special to be on here with you, who is somebody who I love dearly. And yeah, so I'm really pleased that you're having these difficult, well, they're not difficult for us, but these are difficult
Mm.
conversations, but they're so important. And I'm so pleased that you're the voice, your loving, caring, genuine voice out there. So thank you.
Thanks for joining me. If you want to find out more about what's on offer from Look Good Feel Better, head over to www.lgfb.co.nz and join me next week for another cancer conversation.